Hey, YouTube. Well, I wanted to get on here and I couldn't think of a subject. And I thought, well, what do you know about? I like people to talk about what they know about as opposed to what they think or feel. Fuck your feelings. No. What do you know about? So I was thinking, and so much of my memory, because I'm 60 years old, I should have great wisdom by now, you would think. But I spent so many years as a dope fiend, and so many of my memories are locked up in that period that I don't allow myself to really think in detail about it. I don't want anything to ever be so attractive that I want to return to it. So I kind of train myself to not engage certain memories and things like that. But there's been some good years too. I mean, some good years on this side. So I was thinking about therapy. When, why to do therapy? My experience was when I got clean this time. Now, anybody listening to me know I consider myself delivered. Please don't confuse my delivered with Andrew and such delivered. Although, who am I to judge? You know, whatever your deliverance is, honey, I know what mine is. So when I got delivered from dope, I was in drug program, right? And because we were, because I was HIV positive, there were certain services available to me. You know, just because of that and that experience, people were struggling with that still. 15 years ago, they were still struggling with HIV/AIDS. So there were certain things available, and one of those things was therapy. So I got in therapy. I said, I won't sit up here and talk about AIDS. I mean, shit, I'd been already positive enough years by then that I didn't really consider that my primary issue. My primary issue was not getting high again, right? So in my 20s, I had been involved in 12-step programs, and I enjoyed them. I liked them. It gave me an instant new community and all this kind of stuff. This was in LA, in West Hollywood. But I relapsed. And then after I relapsed, I couldn't stop relapsing. So at about 28, I went into 25, stayed clean a couple of years, but it was a struggle after I relapsed, right? So I didn't have a lot of trust in 12-step meetings. And I was running out of time. I think I was 44 at the time I was getting clean. And I don't feel like I had another relapse in me. When I went into AA in Los Angeles, I had been, I'd only used for like 5 years at the time. I mean, when I was 25 years old. But it was for alcohol and LSD and pills. And while I was in there, I discovered crystal meth. Just by hearing other people talk about it, it became intriguing to me. Or in some part of my mind, because they weren't trying to romanticize it, but that's exactly what happened with me. I start feeling like that sounds like a good thing or something that I missed. So lo and behold, when I relapsed, immediately found crystal meth. That cost me the next 17 years of my life. At that time, I had been in jail for a few church stays. After I started with meth, lived in jail. Then I started selling drugs. I ended up in prison 10 times in 10 years. I know you heard it before, but the facts are just the facts, ma'am. So anyway, I was terrified of getting loaded again, and I did not trust 12-step groups. Now, I do believe I was delivered from drugs. In other words, the obsession was removed. Usually, every time a person gets out of prison, you're in a volatile state of mind. You've been away from it for a long time. For me, I feel like I'm going to boo-boo on myself coming out of that gate, right? So this time I had to come up with a plan. The people at the prison, Vacaville State Prison, I had the drug program pick me up at the gate. They were kind enough to do that. There was an agency. I use every agency available. Anyway, they picked me up, took me to this place, Walton House, and that became my journey to recovery. But I still was not confident about staying clean. Because one time would send me back, and I did not have 17 years left in me. So I started seeing this therapist, right? This is outside of the program. My idea of therapy was like you see on the movies. This guy, Einstein looking guy, is sitting there asking you, how does that make you feel? And how does that make you feel? Where he sits back and draws a nice pay for asking me, how did that make me feel? So I didn't have, of course, I had no personal knowledge. But I discovered it was invaluable to me. So for me, I haven't been to a 12-step meeting in damn near 15 years. Well, I went a little bit in the beginning, so maybe 13 years. That wasn't helping me. I didn't feel like. I felt like I had resentments about finding out about serious drugs while I was in there. And I had resentments because I relapsed. Because something in me could not resist when that urge came over me. Now, I'm a believer in God, and I believe that God delivered me from drugs, but I had to also be a part of my own recovery. So here's an example of what this therapist did for me. We're talking about therapy, not drugs, but whatever your issue is. For me, therapy helped me. I had therapy for 5 years, off and on 5 years. Certain programs, you can get a certain amount of months in a certain amount of time, then you got to start over again and over. Whatever, about 5 years, right? First time I knew this thing was valuable for me and would work for me and help me is I have to understand things, right? I have to understand things or repeat them. And I'll be caught unawares. Terrified of that. So I went to this therapist. He was actually a drug counselor / therapist. And it was here. Actually, I work at that agency now. I mean, or a volunteer. I have groups there. To this day, I'm so grateful for that agency. Anyway, when I got to his office for my appointment, I told him, okay, so this is the first time I wanted to use today. And he said, oh, okay, let's track it. So he said, when did this desire come over you? And I said, well, I remember being at breakfast at the house, at the drug program where I lived. And I don't remember any kind of idea of that. But by the time I walked in your office, I was triggered. And I had, my mind would not stop with thinking about drugs. So he'd say, okay, so you left the program, you got on the bus to come here. I said, yep. I don't remember having any desire or any thoughts about drugs. He said, okay, so what happened on the trip? Is 1 bus, 2 bus, 3 bus? I said, no, this was on the first bus, which is down Polk Street, which is right down the heart of where I used to sell and do drugs. I said, okay, so I got maybe a half a mile down the road, and I looked up, and there was the building where I used to, that's where I got busted all those times. It's also where I used to do drugs at, right? I said, and a thought came to me. Oh, I remember something. When I passed by the building where I used to live, it's called the New Pacific Hotel on Polk Street in San Francisco. I looked up, and in that same hotel where I used to do my business, there was a naked man in the window. Naked man tweaking in the window. All I do is notice him. It was just a passing thing as the bus was passing, right? He said, okay, and then what happened? I said, nothing. I just started thinking about stuff, and by the time I got off the bus, I was already thinking about some old things I used to do. And I'm just trying to voice that I felt triggered. I mean, I felt like I was thinking about things that I hadn't thought about since I got clean. So the man told me, you passed by this building where you were familiar and you used to sell and do drugs. You looked up in the window and there was somebody tweaking naked in the window. He said, so where do you think the trigger came from? Light bulb. That helped me to understand trigger. Now, I had been in 12-step meetings 5 years when I was younger, around the program, and I had never identified what a trigger was. This is why this dude was valuable to me, because he helped me to understand myself. Just by seeing something that is not that I want to get high. A trigger is something that reminded me of something. And that's all it was. He said, you feel like you want to get high? I said, no. I think understanding where they came from helps me to not have to act on it. Simple thing. And you know what? Honey, I ain't hardly ever been back to that street again. So why would I put myself through it? Okay, so this is what. I started seeing this therapist, and for the next 5 years I saw him. But each time, I mean, I thought of a therapist as somebody you sit up there and tell them about how you was an abused child and how your mama never loved you and how your daddy slapped the shit out of you and all this kind of stuff. But it never got that deep. It was basically what's going on. And because there was always something going on. Let me give you one more example. Okay. When I got clean, I still have some of this street roughness in me. I rough around the edges, you might say. So I found myself occasionally losing it, going off on somebody, screaming. And I hate it. I hated how I felt after I got to screaming and hollering at somebody. For no huge reason, you know. So he walked me through that. This is the second therapist. And he said, when does this usually happen? I said, well, usually it's on the bus. Why the bus? I don't know. I have a problem with people talking down to me. And that seems to occur most often when I'm getting on a bus. I didn't like the way the bus drivers talk to me. So I let them have it. And I'd scream and yell at them. He said, okay. All right. So why do you take the bus? I don't have a car. Right. Well, why not the train? Train, you don't even see the bus drivers. You don't see anybody. I said, yeah, but certain places you can't go on the train. I mean, fortunately now I live right almost on the train tracks, so it's very convenient. And I use that as much as I can, but there are opportunities sometimes you have to get on. Particularly these bus drivers are stressed out with teenagers and all that kind of stuff. Anyway, so he said, so why are you encountering the bus driver though? He said, when I get on the bus, I just pay my fare and sit down. I said, I don't know. I asked him for directions or asked him, is this the stop to go here or whatever? He said, well, what would happen? How would you feel if you didn't interact with the bus driver at all? What if you just got on, just kind of show your pass and got on the bus and made it a point not to interact? I hate to tell you, baby, I know it sounds simple, but I almost never even look at my bus drivers now. It is the truth. It was just that simple. You keep hollering at bus drivers, why in the hell are you talking to them? Came to that. So, of course, there's many, many examples. I had this huge thing where about sex and all this kind of shit, which never materialized. But I became comfortable with the idea that maybe it won't materialize. Maybe it's just a part of the aging process where you're not going to be what you were when you were in your 20s. It's just not going to happen with or without drugs kind of thing. But I haven't been triggered for drugs in all these years. Now, God has a lot to do with this thing. Faith is essential, right? But your faith will also lead you to things that you need. When I just had this damn surgery 2 weeks ago, it's because I was going to the doctor and handling my business where they were able to discover it so early that it could be taken care of. Now, in my old life, I would never, I'd have been probably stage 4 when I even got there because I just didn't go to doctors. Anyway, the point is you need therapy, you need help. It ain't got to be about drugs. I mean, it can be about whatever you're going through. Sex issues, abandonment issues, all kinds of things. I stayed involved for 5 years, so it tells you. But in that 5 years, though, I didn't have that problem I had in 12-step. I didn't go out and use dope again. And if something was really bugging me, I'd go to the therapist and we would talk it out and I would figure out what was the root of it. Why am I feeling that way? What can I do to help myself to change my behaviors? So, I went on one here. I don't like to do real long videos, so let me pull up out of this. But Just want to encourage you people, if you need therapy, get it. If you're finding yourself losing your temper all the time, go see somebody. Get the help that you need, honey. Get the help you need. A therapist is not somebody who's going to, get in your brain necessarily, but it's somebody who would help you navigate your life till you get back on track. Now, you might fall off track for many different things, but it's good to have someone to talk it out with. I left that. I feel like I no longer needed that kind of help, so I just did kind of a group situation, not a 12-step group, just community type things to connect with other people in my situation. And I did that for a long time, and then I started doing it myself. I started being a peer advocate, peer facilitator. Anyway, that's my therapy talk. So if you got problems, you need help, get it. Later, people.